Hey, so this is our third and final installment of our just a small series on leadership. I want to just thank you for if you've watched the other two. The first video you got a glimpse of how we look at leadership at Northwestern College within the wrestling program. The second video, I kind of walked you through some things that we do as we intentionally try to develop uh, leadership skills within our wrestlers, it, whether it's our captains or just guys on the team. Because the reality is, at some point in life, you're going to lead. You will lead a group of individuals. You will be called upon to lead. Okay, and today we're going to kind of look at an aspect of leadership or an encouragement that I often share with our guys in those positions. Um, we're going to look at it from a faith perspective. All right. So at Northwestern, we are an intentionally Christian college, and what that infers or what that means is uh, when you come to Northwestern, I mean, you're going to look at wrestling, you're going to learn wrestling, but you're going to learn it, or you're going to experience an aspect of it that is unique to faith. Okay, and like with most programs, whether you're going to Morningside or Briarcliff or Grandview or probably even Iowa, uh, every program has a platform or a purpose or a vision. Uh, and Northwestern is no different. Okay, and one of the things four of the things that we really work with our guys on, and we promise parents, we promise guys, listen, when you come to Northwestern, you're going to learn wrestling. You're going to get an incredible education uh, at a reputable college. But ultimately, the 4 years that you spend in our program is going to influence the kind of man you're going to be in the future, right? So we really are intentional. We really um, strive to develop some of those characteristics that we believe that a man of God uh, has, right, or encompasses, or right. So four things that we really stress. Four things we stress, and they get this from a freshman all the way till they graduate. We want our guys to understand what it means to reject passivity. Okay? In a passive world, in a world that encourages you to sit in front of your screen and just wait for someone else to do it, we encourage our young men to reject passivity. We encourage them or try to instill in them the skill of expecting a greater reward. And wrestling does that masterfully, right? You put the work in now and you get little return for it now. But you put it in now because you know that later on you're going to reap the rewards, right? So we use wrestling to get young men to see that in life. Okay, you want a good marriage, you do those things now that maybe you're not going to get anything in return, but you're going to reap the benefit of that later on, right? We really encourage our guys to accept responsibility. It's something that is ingrained in us as men. We are created to do work, and when we do work, there is fulfillment there. So we really encourage our guys to identify what those responsibilities are, accept those, and much like they would a wrestling match, really attack them. Attack those positions or attack those responsibilities. And the last thing is kind of aligns with what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. Is we encourage our guys when they get the opportunity to lead courageously. And we use the word courageously um, because leadership sometimes is something we try to avoid, right? To be a mentor, to the buck stops here. If you're a Jocko Willing person, you really like what he says. He talks about extreme ownership, right? So when you lead, you need to do it courageously because it's a little scary to be in those positions at times. And when I became a father, it was scary to understand that my life now directly directly impacted, every choice I made directly impacted the lives of my kids. And that was a reality that I knew, but it became more real once you have children. So one of the things that we encourage our guys, so when we talk about leading courageously, we often look to a story in Scripture in Joshua, right? So if you read the book of Joshua, great book, a lot of action. If you're into action kind of stuff, and it's a story of how the reins were handed over from Moses to Joshua. Moses is, you learn that story young, when he goes into Egypt, he rescues God rescues the Israelites using Moses, and they're knuckleheads, so they go against God, and they question him, and they complain, and because of that they're left wandering for 40 years. Well, at the end of that 40 years, Moses is dying, and God pulls Joshua aside and says, listen, Joshua, you're the man, right? You're the guy. And three times, all right, three times he tells Joshua to be strong and courageous, all right? And in verse 6, he tells him, so I would encourage you, uh, read Joshua chapter 1 through 9 at least. But in those 9 verses, he mentions 3 times. And the first time he says, Joshua, to be strong and courageous, because what I told you, and I'm paraphrasing, what I told you is going to happen, right? So he gives him a promise. I told you I was going to do this, and I'm going to do it. Okay? So when we're in a position of leadership, God has opened the door for that. He has put me in a position of leadership. He's put me at the helm at Northwestern College. He's given me the gifts and the skills and the demeanor that I need to be effective there. So he's prepared me. He promises us that he's going to give us those things, right? So he understand that when you're in a position of leadership, God has promised you that he's prepared the way. Okay. The second time that they offer up, that God says, be strong and courageous, he tells him to not stray from the left or to the right of the laws that I've given you. Okay, so be strong and courageous because I've given you a plan. I've given you a plan. And he's telling Joshua that he's given him the Old Testament. He's given him the law that he gave Moses, right? So he's given him what he needs. He's given him a plan to be successful. You follow this plan, you're going to be okay, right? So when God has given us a position of leadership, he's given us a plan, right? And the third thing, and probably the one that's quoted most, is verse 9. And he tells them, be strong and courageous, for I will never leave you. Okay? And the idea that as I go through my coaching day, as I go through tough times, as I work with young men who, they're sometimes broken. They come to us from all over the United States, sometimes all over the world, and they have a lot of experiences. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. But as you work with them, and it becomes overwhelming and scary, cling to the fact, or cling to the idea that God is never far from us. He's never far from us. We may not see him, we may not feel him, but he is never far from us. Okay? So when you lead from a faith perspective, when you're in a position of leadership, you cling to those 3 things. We encourage our guys. Understand that God has given us a promise. He's given us a plan, and he has given us himself. And those things are encouraging, right? Those things are encouraging. And so tangible things that we can ultimately do to know what that plan is, to see his promise, to understand that he's with us, is a couple things that we tell our guys to consider, some practices to consider. So this is what I'm giving you, application. First thing is get into his word. Christ tells us to daily pick up your cross. And so for us, I just really challenge our guys to get into his word on a daily basis. It doesn't need to be an hour-long study where you are pulling out 5 commentaries and really getting into C.S. Lewis or R.C. Sproul or those types of guys, or John MacArthur. It's just get into His Word on a regular basis. Okay, read a chapter or a chapter from a book of Scripture a day. Psalm 119 is going to take you a couple days probably, but so that's the first thing is get into His Word. And once you start getting into His Word, you begin to know God. You begin to see Him a little bit more clearly. Second thing we really encourage our guys to do is take the focus off yourself and try to encourage those around you. Leadership is about pouring into other people, right? And it's hard to pour into other people when you're so focused on your situation. So when guys they're starting to complain a lot, they're starting to really get down on their situation, do something helpful, an act of kindness, or encourage one of your teammates. Okay, and it's amazing what happens when I begin to get out of myself and help other people. I'm less focused on my issues, and my issues become not as prevalent. Okay, they're still there, but the focus is more on other people. That's what leadership's about. Okay, and the third thing that we tell our guys to do is study leaders. God has given you the gift of leaders in your life, whether it's a mentor, a parent, a coach, a teacher, someone in our sport. I think of a coach like Tom Brands or Rob Cole, or at Cornell, or Tom Ryan or Cale Sanders. Study what those guys do. Those guys are great leaders, right? They invest in their in the people around them. Study what they do. What do they do well? What can you begin to do in your leadership style? Okay. And whether they're leaders or not, we encourage our guys that leaders are readers. So we try to do things to get our guys to just get into a book or read something online or something, but really study what leadership is. So those things are things that we encourage our guys to do as they lead from a faith aspect. Get into His Word, encourage those around you, and then study what great leaders do. All right. Ultimately, our hope for our guys is that they know God. All right, and I'll end with this. All right, we want our young men when they come to Northwestern and they understand what they reject passivity, expect a greater reward, accept responsibility, and lead courageously. We want them to know God. We want them to walk in a manner that's worthy of the calling that God has put on us, right? As a Christian, walk in a manner worthy of that. And the third thing we want them to do is their life to bear fruit. We want them to be able to bear fruit. And that's not wins and losses. That's how you invest in other people, all right? The impact that you make. And that's what leadership's about. How are you pouring into other people? How are you investing? And for us, how are you doing that in a way that honors Christ? All right? Hopefully these things are helpful to you. If you have questions about that, or you want to know more about kind of our platform or what kind of things we do, I encourage you to reach out and email me or message me. I've gotten a few messages from the last ones or last couple takes, and I appreciate that. And if you want to know more, just reach out to me. Thank you to the Arena Wrestling Academy for the opportunity to kind of talk about these things. It's nice to study. It's nice to kind of articulate what your vision is. It kind of keeps it fresh in your mind. So go out there, keep pouring into people, know God, walk in a manner worthy, and I'm praying you bear fruit. All right? Thank you, guys. I'm out.